Hello, today we will be presenting on topic media audiences. From the previous unit we got to know about sender, messenger, channel, receiver, which is SMCR model. Here we are going to discuss about the receiver, in other words, audience or public. The audience is any group of people who receive a media text and not just people who are together in the same place. They receive the text via media carrier such as a newspaper or magazine, television, DVD, radio or the internet. So basically, an audience means the person or people who are engaging with media. Dennis McQuell, a British communication theorist, emphasizes on Greco-Roman audience, which as understood by modern scholars and writers, refers to audience belonging to geographical regions and countries that culturally and so historically were directly and intimately influenced by the language, culture, government and religion of the ancient Greeks and Romans. Features of this can be elaborated as planning and organization of viewing as well as listening of the performers themselves, events with public and popular character, secular content of performance for entertainment, education and vicarious emotional experience, voluntary, individual acts of choice and attention, specialization of roles of authors, performers and spectators, and physical locatedness of performance and spectator experience. Before we really understand the term audiences, let us discuss the similar words along with the meanings. The first one is public. Conceptually, it refers to political formation around a cause or an issue. Second is crowd. Crowd is observable and within a particular place. It is larger and restricted. Crowd gathers at the place of demonstration or an accident. It has spontaneity of formation and dispersal, unlike a group. Third is group. It is nothing but a well-known members in the organized system. Usually in a group, members know each other, share common values, have knowledge about membership, have a certain structure of relationships and continue over time with some goals to achieve. Fourth one is mass. This refers to different heterogeneous, fluid, unintellectual, scattered, anonymous, and a large number of individuals as a collective. Mass are not self-aware and manipulated by someone. The term mass also gets used for mass market or mass electorate. Now let us understand what audience is. Audience is a set of spectators for public event, readers of printed book, viewers of motion picture visiting cinema hall, television viewers, internet users or members on social networking sites. This indicates institutionalization by media. Audiences have their likes and dislikes, interests and preferences. Importantly, expectations in their engagement with the media. Let us further talk about different attributes of media audiences. They can be examined by 8 characteristics. Numbers. Most media audiences are largely perceived in terms of numbers. It also refers to social context, so audience is not mere quantity but has qualities as well. Anonymity. The audience members do not know each other. Their nature varies depending upon the medium. There is no face to the audience. Heterogeneity. Audience could be the people of different age, gender, political ideology, having differential social and economic standing. Geography or place. Usually in the world prior to the internet, transnational television and satellite radio, audiences were geographically constituted. Nowadays it has become much more anonymous, large and passive. Time. The audiences are also defined in terms of daytime, prime time, first telecast, repeat show, regular or one time, and so on based on their availability. Medium or channel or content. The type of medium by its very nature also defines broad characteristics of its audiences. Even within the same medium, genre or type of content defines its audience. Language, semantic codes, genres, subjects and styles defines who the audiences are for that message. Expectations. Audience has certain expectations from media to address their information, entertainment, and education needs. Longevity. Members of the audience produce, reproduce, develop, and distribute culture through media. Now, moving on to the next slide. While talking about the categories of media audiences, there is no consensus on the types of audiences in media studies, as scholars have suggested varied classifications. For our purpose, we can broadly define it based on the size, geography, and the sphere of usage. Taxonomy of audience can be defined in three main ways of sender-audience relationship: audience as target, audience as participant, and audience as spectator. Importantly, audiences are perceived as destination for sending signals or messages for the purpose of control or influence. With continuous evolution of mass communication, many theories came into being to define relationship of media and audiences. First one is bullet theory. This hypodermic needle theory is a linear communication theory which suggests that a media message is injected directly into the brain of a passive homogeneous audience. This theory suggests that media texts are close and audience are influenced in the same way. Second one is individual difference theory. This theory negated the role of social structures and membership of the individual with the social group. Since it isolated the individual from his or her social environment, it gives no framework to media producers to make messages for individuals. Last one is social category theory, which assumed that in any given society there are groups or categories of people with specific characteristics. Members of those groups or social categories react to the media messages in a similar way. Moving on to the next slide. Here we would discuss how audiences have been conceived in three main traditions: structural, behavioral, cultural. Structural tradition looks at demographics, amount and kind of media exposure, flow of audience from one media to another, and so on. It is centered on questions like who does what with which media. Behavioral. This tradition explores effects and use of media by its audiences. As we discussed earlier, the early mass media research was based on effects of media on children or young people. Here the questions are, what does the medium do to the people? Unlike socio-cultural tradition, which questions what people do with media. Cultural tradition. Unlike both the previous traditions, this tradition looks at media as institutions and how audiences negotiate meaning of media texts. The objective here is not to examine influence or use, but the nature of relationship and rituals associated with the consumption by the audiences. Each of these traditions, in a way, represents progression of audience concept through research methodologies and their relationship with media. We shall now be discussing varied ways of researching audiences and how that reveals their relationship with mass media. Media effects. This approach presumed that media messages are sent and received by audiences, mostly passively. It came into existence to understand response of audiences to media content. Cultivation analysis. There are three different elements to it. Institutional processes impacting production of media content through decision making and policy formation. Message system analysis, as messages are a reflection of mainstream modern culture. Relationship between exposure to television messages and audience beliefs and behaviors by comparing groups of light and heavy users of medium under study. Cultural studies. It focuses on actual messages or discourse of communication as well as genre of media message. Cultural studies are qualitative and critical in nature. Reception analysis. From the quantitative tradition of audience research, reception studies brought in qualitative analysis in audience research. It refers to studies focusing on meaning, production, and experience of audiences and their interaction with media texts. Everyday life approach. This is borrowed from humanities and focus on subjectivity. It examines audience experiences and role of media in their daily life. Rooted in reception analysis, it acknowledges that member of the audience interprets the media messages contextually. From the one-to-many and center-to-periphery conception of mass media to the more diverse one-to-one and many-to-many media will create newer audiences. Audiences today use media in multifold. For instance, you watch television on mobile and SMS your friend and update your status on social media. These are new areas for audience research. For understanding media and society relationship, audience is an important element. Media audiences define the communication, and it is because of them that communication takes place. With digital technologies, the future of audience has become more dynamic as audience has become media producer now. With this, we come to an end of Unit 2 from Media and Society.